In this video, we're going to look at the Desktop Notifications API and how to use it. So let's look at a demo of what we're going to do here. We've got two links, request permission and trigger. Now, request permission is going to specifically ask whether we want to use or allow desktop notifications. So in this case, when I click it, we see that we get this native browser message come up here. And it's saying, do we want to allow localhost, which is the domain I'm currently on, to show desktop notifications? Now, if we don't answer this and we click trigger, this just generates a little alert here that I've created to say, please allow notifications before doing this. So we request permission. We can either deny or allow this. Let's go ahead and deny it and see what happens. We get a message saying you have denied notifications. Obviously, in a production environment, you would choose a more suitable way of telling a user something rather than using alerts. Now, I can use the little button here to go and enable Use Global Default. So let's request permission again, and this time allow it. And you can see that it says you have granted notifications. Now that that's done, when we hit trigger, you can see that this notification is shown up here. There are a couple of elements to this. We've got an image here, which is a custom image that I've included. We'll learn how to do that. We've got a title and a body. And when I click this, we have a unique identifier. And what this is going to do is, because I've themed this under being a new message, when I click it, it's going to apply this query string to the current page that we're on. So this is useful for if you are monitoring users' messages or something like that, and you want them give the ability to click it and go through to a specific page. So we're going to learn how to do all of this in just a moment. So we're now ready to start building the functionality to first of all ask for permission and then trigger a notification. Now this is all in sort of testing, so we're not really doing anything useful here. We're just learning about how the actual functionality works. So you can see that I've got a basic document markup. I'm going to create two links as we saw in the demo, and the first one is going to be to request permission, and the second is going to be to trigger this. So this will trigger the notification. For the href, we'll just set these to hashes because we don't want them to actually do anything. But we'll give these IDs so we can target them with the JavaScript. So I'm going to call this DN for desktop notification permission. And this one I'm going to call DN trigger. So down here, let's open up some script tags. Obviously, this would usually be in an external file. We'll just do it here for simplicity. Let's target the two anchors we've just created so we can add event listeners to these when they're clicked. So I'm going to say dn perm is document.get element by ID, and we choose the ID that we gave here, which is obviously dn perm. Let's do exactly the same thing for dn or dn trigger. And there we go. So let's focus on actually adding the event listener to the permission so we can get permissions from a user. You're going to have to get permission from a user. You can, of course, trigger this automatically, but it might be polite just to allow your user to click a button rather than having it shown to them as soon as they land on your site. So we add a event listener to the dnperm link, and we want this to be on click. So we run our callback function. We'll also supply E in here, that's the event, and we want to prevent the default behavior here. So now what we want to do is check for notification support. Now this is really important because obviously this being not supported in a lot of browsers, you may want to do something if your user doesn't have this ability. You might even not want to not show the link to request permission in the first place. So a simple if statement here with saying, does window.notification not exist? If so, let's alert, sorry, notifications are not supported. So obviously you would do something else other than alert, but for now that will do. we now use this global notification object to request permission. So here we have a callback, and we have something in here, the argument here, which will give us a string whether the notification permission has been denied or granted. So if we console log this P, we can practice this as we go along. So in here, let's refresh. We've got the two links as we've seen. Let's open our console just in case anything goes wrong and we can debug it. I'm going to click request permission, and you can see now this has brought up this dialog, so we can click deny or allow. So remember, we're console logging that P argument in the callback, and that's going to be either denied as a string or granted as a string. So let's practice both. If I deny it, you can see that we get denied console logged. Let's go ahead and reset this back to use global ask, and request permission allow, it says granted. So we know we can now use these inside of an if statement in here to determine whether the user has granted or denied. So if P is denied, we want to alert to the user. Obviously you wouldn't actually want to do this, but for our testing purposes, you have denied notifications. Now otherwise, we might want to do a comparison for granted, and in this case we'll also alert, just so we can keep track of how we're doing, to say you have granted notifications. So let's just check that these work so we haven't missed anything in our if statement. Again, set this back to ask, refresh, hit request, allow. We get the alert as we'd expect, and we'll go ahead and just refresh this or put this back to default, and we'll deny just to make sure that works. Perfect. So we'll reset this once more again, and here we go. Right, so we can now get on with the rest of our code. So we want to simulate some kind of event. Now, obviously, you wouldn't ask for a desktop notification to be enabled when a user clicks a trigger link, as we've got on our page here. That's silly. You'd want it to happen maybe if you're ajaxing to a file to check a user has new messages, or something like that, or if on page refresh you're checking for new messages, you want to do that. But for now, let's just simulate an event. And we want to simulate this by allowing a user to click on this trigger link just here. So we'll say dnTrigger.add event listener as we did before, and we want to add an event listener for the click event. So now we have a function obviously with the event here, and we want to do the same. We want to prevent the default. So I'm going to create a variable here. In fact, I'm going to do that before I prevent the default. And I'm going to call this notify, and we'll look at why I've done that in a moment. We're going to create a new notification object, and that's what will actually trigger the notification to be shown. So we're going to check now if notifications have been allowed or denied. If the notification permission property is default, the string default, that means that we haven't chosen. So for now, actually, rather than do this if statement, let's console log, again, the notification global object permission. Console log. So when we refresh and hit trigger, it says default, and that's because we've got this set to default. We haven't actually allowed or denied, so it's assuming that we've denied them, and it's correct. Well, we haven't actually denied them, but it'll assume that we can't show them. And that means that if it's set to default, we won't be able to show notifications. So in this case, we want to create an if statement to say if notification.permission is default, then we can't actually show the notification. So this is the point that we're saying to the, or writing in the code, let's check if it's been, clicked, deny or allow. If not, we're just, we can't do anything. So in this case, we'll alert, please allow notifications before doing this. And again, you wouldn't do this in your code, just simply because you don't want to tell the user every time a notification might be available that they don't have permission to do this. If they've clicked deny or they've closed the dialog, we just want to ignore this altogether. So in this case, the best thing to do is just not do anything. Now, otherwise, we have this notify variable I've created at the top of this closure here. So we'll say notify is a new notification. So this is a little bit different than using the global notification object. In this case, what we're going to do is we're now saying we want this to be a notification. So I'm going to write new message from Alex. And by doing this, we're just actually automatically activating this new notification. So let's check this works. I'll make sure that my notification is set to be asked. So when we click on trigger, it says please allow notifications before doing this. We've spoken about that in depth. Request permission, I'll allow this. It tells me I've allowed it. When I click trigger now, we see new message from Alex. Now we don't see the image or the body we saw at the start of the video. We'll go ahead and add them in a minute. We pass another object through to this new notification, like so, and that contains properties. Now there are lots of properties that we can use, but we're going to focus on body, tag, and icon. So the body, as you probably guessed, is just going to be what's displayed under the title. So I'm going to say, how are you today? It really is a lovely day. So the second, I'm going to choose icon, and then we'll discuss tag in a minute and how that works. And we'll also be looking at adding a event handler to this notify as well. So the icon is just a location to an icon file, or not necessarily an icon file, a file that you want to be the icon. In this case, inside of the image directory, in this directory I'm working in, I have message.png. So I can just go ahead and include this, and that will just display. So it's image/message.png. So let's preview this to make sure that this has worked. When I click trigger now, you see that we've got new message from Alex, the body and the image. We've got a transparent background here as well. So that's looking really, really nice. But when I click on it, it goes and nothing happens. Presumably, you'd want to attach some kind of event handler to this to do something when a user clicks it. It's intuitive that if a new message is received, you click on it and you would open that new message. So down here, we want to say notify dot, and then we want to apply an event handler to this notification object we've created. Remember that this notification object is unique. You can create these notification objects over and over and over again. That will generate new notifications. So we're going to say onClick, and that's going to run a function. Let's console log this, because this now refers to this actual notification, and we can access these properties in here. So when we refresh and hit trigger and I click it, we have this notification object. We've got the icon, which is the full URL to this message.png. We've got tag, body, the language, the direction, which is auto at the moment, but that can be left to right and right to left. These are all available on the W3C or whatever. But what we want to focus on here is this tag. We want this tag to be the unique identifier for this notification. So in this case, I could say that the tag is 1, 2, 3, 4. So what's going to happen now is when I console log this dot tag, that will actually console log for me the tag that I applied. So this could be the ID of the message in your database or something like that, however this ties into your application. So because we have access to all of these, we can say window location is message equals this dot tag. Now, a little thing here, if I run this again with the same tag, you'll notice that this won't actually do anything. It's not activating this message. And that's because the message with the same tag has already been opened. And I think this is probably done on purpose. I haven't specifically looked into it, but it does make sense. You wouldn't want the same thing coming up and up and up again, if you had the same tag here. So I'll change this to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we should see when I hit trigger, this appear. When I click it, that goes through to message 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And obviously you can do anything you want with this functionality, but this is obviously just an example. So we've looked at the notifications API and how to check for permission or ask for permission, trigger an event, and we've also looked at some of the properties that we can use inside the notification object. We've also then looked at clicking this to go through to somewhere, just to sort of tie in the useful functionality of these.